My boyfriend admitted he might not love me anymore after his ex came back to town. My boyfriend and I had been together for 2 years when his ex-girlfriend suddenly came back into his life. And everything changed. Before we started dating, Jerome was engaged to someone else, a girl named Brianna who I knew from college. They seemed happy together, the kind of couple everyone expected to last forever. But a few months before their wedding, Brianna broke things off. She said she wasn't ready and needed space to figure out her life. Jerome was heartbroken. I was there for him as a friend at first, just checking in and making sure he was okay. But over time, we grew closer. A year after his breakup, we started dating. Things were good between us. He was kind, attentive, and made me feel special. I really believed we had something real. Then Brianna moved back to town. I didn't find out from Jerome. I heard it from a mutual friend who saw her at the grocery store. When I mentioned it to him that night, he got quiet and changed the subject. I told myself it didn't mean anything. But over the next few weeks, I noticed small changes. He'd be on his phone more than usual. He'd seem distracted during dinner, like his mind was somewhere else. When I asked if something was wrong, he always said he was just tired from work. One evening, I came home early and found him sitting on the couch staring at his phone. When he saw me, he quickly put it away. "Who were you texting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He hesitated. "Just a friend." "Was it Brianna?" The silence that followed told me everything. He finally admitted they'd been talking. He said she reached out to apologize for how things ended, and he felt like he owed her a conversation. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that their conversations were innocent. But something in my gut told me there was more to it. A few days later was supposed to be our anniversary dinner. I got to the restaurant early and waited at our table. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. I kept checking my phone, but there was nothing from him. Finally, I got a short text. "Sorry, something came up. Can we reschedule?" I sat there alone feeling stupid. The waiter kept asking if I wanted to order, and I kept saying I was waiting for someone. Eventually, I paid for my drink and left. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the park near campus where we used to hang out. I don't know why I went there. Maybe I already knew what I'd find. And I was right. Jerome was sitting on a bench with Brianna. They weren't touching, but they were sitting close and talking in a way that felt too familiar. Too intimate. I walked up to them. Brianna saw me first, and her face went pale. Jerome turned around, and his expression was pure guilt. "I can explain," he started. "Were you ever going to tell me?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. He couldn't look me in the eye. "I don't know what's happening. I'm confused. Seeing her again brought up a lot of feelings I thought were gone." "Do you still love me?" He paused for too long. "I thought I did. But honestly, I don't know anymore." That was the answer I needed. Not the one I wanted, but the one I needed. I didn't yell or cry. I just took off the bracelet he'd given me for my birthday and set it on the bench between them. "I hope you figure out what you want," I said. "But I'm not going to wait around while you decide." I walked back to my car and drove home. He didn't follow me. He didn't call or text that night. And that silence confirmed what his words couldn't. The next morning, I packed up his things and left them on the porch. I changed my passwords, removed our photos from social media, and started the slow process of moving on. It's been 3 months now. Some days are harder than others. I still think about him sometimes, wondering if he ended up with Brianna or if he's still figuring things out. But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. What I learned from all of this is that I deserve someone who's sure about me. Not someone who needs his ex to come back to realize what he wants. Not someone who leaves me sitting alone at a restaurant on our anniversary. My friends have been amazing through everything. They remind me that his confusion was never about me not being enough. It was about him not being ready. I'm not angry at him anymore. I'm not even angry at Brianna. People's feelings are complicated, and sometimes love just isn't enough to make something work. But I know my worth now. And the next person I'm with will never have to wonder if I love them. Because I'll make sure they know every single day. I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop when I see Jerome's car drive past the window, and my stomach drops even though I thought I was doing better. The silver Honda he bought last spring turns the corner and disappears behind the brick building across the street. My hands freeze over my laptop keyboard, and I stare at the blank document on my screen. The essay about European history that's due tomorrow suddenly feels impossible to care about. I watch the empty street for another minute, hoping maybe I imagined it, but I know what I saw. My coffee has gone cold in the mug beside me, and I take a sip anyway, grimacing at the bitter taste. The cursor on my laptop blinks at me, waiting for words that won't come. I type a sentence, delete it, type it again. Nothing sounds right, and I can't focus on anything except the fact that Jerome was just here, driving past this coffee shop like he used to when we were together. Maybe he was going to the bookstore down the street. Maybe he was meeting someone. Maybe he was meeting Brianna. I shake my head and try to refocus on the essay, but the words blur together on the screen. An hour passes, and I'm still staring at the same blank document when Valerie drops into the chair across from me. She's wearing her gym clothes, and her hair is pulled back in a messy bun, and she takes one look at my face and immediately knows something happened. She doesn't say anything at first, just signals to the barista and orders us both hot chocolate, even though it's barely 3 in the afternoon. When the drinks arrive, she wraps her hands around her mug and waits. I appreciate that she doesn't push, doesn't immediately ask what's wrong. She just sits there, patient and calm, until I'm ready to talk. Finally, I close my laptop and tell her about seeing Jerome's car. She nods slowly, not looking surprised. I realize I've been doing this thing where I act fine around everyone, where I pretend 3 months is enough time to be completely over a 2-year relationship. But Valerie sees through it. She always does. I admit something I've been keeping secret for weeks. I've been checking Jerome's social media from a friend's account even though I blocked him on mine. The confession tumbles out and I feel stupid saying it out loud, but Valerie doesn't look shocked or disappointed. She just nods and takes a sip of her hot chocolate. She tells me gently that maybe I'm not as over it as I keep telling everyone, and the truth of that statement hits me hard. I've been lying to myself, pretending I'm fine when I'm clearly not. Every night before bed, I log into this fake account I made and scroll through Jerome's posts, looking for clues about whether he's with Brianna now. I examine every photo, every comment, trying to piece together what his life looks like without me. Valerie reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. She says it's okay to not be okay yet, that healing isn't linear, and I need to stop beating myself up for having bad days. That night back at our apartment, I sit on my bed with my phone in my hands. Valerie is in the living room giving me space, but I know she's there if I need her. I open the app and navigate to the fake account I've been using to stalk Jerome and Brianna. My finger hovers over the delete button and I feel my heart racing. It feels like ripping off a bandage, this idea of cutting off my access to information about Jerome's life. But I know Valerie is right. I know this constant checking is keeping me stuck, preventing me from actually moving forward. I press delete and the account disappears. Immediately, I want to recreate it, to find another way to keep tabs on him. Instead, I get up and walk to the living room where Valerie has queued up some terrible reality show about people getting married without ever meeting. We watch 3 episodes and Valerie makes popcorn, and every 5 minutes I reach for my phone before remembering there's nothing to check anymore. By the time we go to bed, the urge has lessened slightly, though it's still there lurking in the back of my mind. My phone rings the next morning while I'm pouring cereal, and I see Tiana's name on the screen. My older sister has this way of knowing when something's wrong, even when I haven't told her. I answer, and before I can even say hello, she asks if I'm really okay or just pretending. Something about her voice, the genuine concern in it, breaks through the wall I've been building around my emotions. I start crying right there in the kitchen with my cereal getting soggy in the bowl. I tell her everything. About the social media stalking, about seeing Jerome's car yesterday, about how I still think about him constantly even though I know he's not good for me. I tell her I feel pathetic for not being over it yet, for still caring about someone who couldn't choose me. Tiana listens without interrupting, letting me get it all out. When I finally stop talking, she's quiet for a moment before responding. Tiana reminds me that 3 months isn't very long to get over a 2-year relationship, and I need to stop beating myself up for not being completely healed yet. She says everyone has their own timeline for grief, and mine doesn't have to match anyone else's expectations. Then she suggests something I haven't considered. She thinks I should start seeing the campus counselor to work through everything properly, instead of just pushing it down. I immediately want to say no, that I don't need therapy for a breakup, that other people have real problems. But Tiana cuts through that excuse before I can even voice it. She reminds me that my pain is valid regardless of whether someone else's might be worse. She tells me she's been seeing a therapist for years, and it's helped her work through things she never could have processed alone. By the end of the call, I've agreed to at least look into making an appointment. After we hang up, I sit at the kitchen table for a long time, thinking about what she said. Making the appointment feels like admitting defeat somehow, like I'm acknowledging I can't handle this on my own. I pull up the Campus Counseling Center website on my laptop and stare at the contact form. My fingers hover over the keyboard, and I almost close the tab 3 different times. Finally, I type out my information quickly before I can change my mind again. Name, student ID, reason for appointment. I write breakup and emotional processing and then delete it and write relationship issues instead. That sounds less dramatic, less like I'm making a big deal out of nothing. I hit submit and immediately want to take it back. The confirmation page says someone will call me within 2 business days to schedule. I close my laptop and feel silly for asking for help over a breakup when other people have real problems like family deaths or mental illness or trauma. But then I remember what Tiana said about my pain being valid, and I try to let myself believe it. 2 days later, I get a call from the counseling center, and the receptionist is kind and understanding. She doesn't make me explain everything over the phone, just asks a few basic questions and gets me scheduled for the following week. She mentions they have evening appointments available if that works better with my class schedule. I book a Thursday at 6 and write it in my planner, then immediately wonder if I should cancel. But I don't. I leave the appointment there, a commitment I've made to myself to actually try to work through this instead of just pretending I'm fine. That afternoon, Matthew texts me asking if I want to grab lunch since we haven't hung out since the breakup. I stare at the message for a long time. Matthew and I became friends through Jerome, and part of me thinks it would be weird to hang out now. Another part of me realizes I'm letting Jerome take away my friends too. Like I've given him so much already, and now I'm giving him the friendships we built together. I text back and say yes to lunch. We meet at the sandwich place near campus, and Matthew is already there when I arrive, sitting at a table by the window. Lunch with him is surprisingly normal, and he doesn't mention Jerome at all until I bring it up. We talk about classes and the terrible cafeteria food and the new professor everyone hates. It feels good to have a conversation that isn't about my breakup, to be reminded that I'm a person with interests and opinions beyond this one thing that happened to me. When I finally mention Jerome, asking awkwardly if they still talk, Matthew is honest. He admits he's still friends with both of us, but refuses to play messenger or take sides, which I actually respect. He says he cares about both of us and hopes we can both be happy, but he's not going to be the person who reports back to either of us about what the other is doing. I appreciate the boundary he's setting, even though part of me wants to ask questions about whether Jerome seems happy, whether he's with Brianna now, whether he ever mentions me. Matthew mentions casually that he's noticed I've been skipping our usual Thursday game nights at the student center. I didn't realize how much I'd withdrawn from group activities because they reminded me of Jerome. Thursday nights used to be our thing. Me and Jerome and Matthew and a rotating group of other friends playing board games and eating pizza. After the breakup, I stopped going without really thinking about it, just automatically assuming those nights weren't for me anymore. Matthew says everyone misses me and asks if I'd consider coming back. He promises it won't be weird, that Jerome hasn't been coming either, so I wouldn't have to worry about running into him. I tell Matthew I'll think about it, and I mean it. Maybe it's time to stop letting Jerome's absence dictate what I do and where I go. Maybe it's time to reclaim the parts of my life that I gave up without him even asking me to. Thursday comes faster than I want it to. I spend the whole day feeling sick about game night, checking the clock every few minutes and thinking of excuses to cancel. By the time evening rolls around, I've convinced myself 3 times to skip it, and 3 times talked myself back into going. Valerie watches me change my outfit twice and finally tells me I look fine and need to stop overthinking it. The student center is packed when I arrive, and I almost turn around in the doorway. But then I see the usual group at our table in the back corner, and Matthew waves me over. I walk through the crowd feeling like everyone is staring at me even though nobody is. When I sit down, someone passes me a controller and asks if I want in on the next round. Nobody mentions Jerome. Nobody asks where I've been or makes it awkward. We just play cards and someone orders pizza and I laugh at the same stupid jokes we always make. It feels normal in a way I didn't think was possible anymore. By the end of the night, my face hurts from smiling and I realize I actually had fun. My first therapy session is on Tuesday at 6. I show up 10 minutes early and sit in the waiting room picking at my cuticles until they call my name. The therapist is younger than I expected, maybe in her 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a bun. She introduces herself and asks me to tell her what brought me in. I start explaining about Jerome and Brianna, and within 5 minutes I'm crying. Then I'm apologizing for crying. Then I'm crying about apologizing for crying because I feel stupid for being this upset over a breakup when people come here with real problems. The therapist hands me tissues and waits patiently until I can breathe normally again. She tells me that grief over a relationship is real grief, not something to minimize or rush through. She says there's no timeline for healing and no wrong way to feel. I leave feeling raw but somehow lighter, like maybe it's okay to not be okay yet. The next morning, I wake up before my alarm and decide to try something new. I've been thinking about joining the campus gym for months, but Jerome always said he wasn't a morning person and preferred sleeping in. I grab my old workout clothes from the back of my drawer and head over before I can change my mind. The gym is mostly empty at 6 in the morning, just a few dedicated runners on treadmills and someone lifting weights in the corner. I get on an elliptical and put in my headphones, and for 30 minutes I don't think about anything except moving and breathing. Requested Reads is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. When I'm done, I feel tired but good, like I accomplished something that was just for me. I decide to come back tomorrow. By Friday, I've been to the gym 3 times and I'm starting to recognize the regulars. There's a girl who always uses the same treadmill and a guy who does pull-ups for what seems like hours. On my way to the water fountain, I run into Kellen from my biology class. He's wearing a tank top and looks surprised to see me. We start talking about the upcoming exam, and he mentions he's been struggling with the genetics unit. I admit I'm confused about it too, and we stand there comparing notes for 10 minutes. He's easy to talk to and doesn't seem to know anything about my relationship drama, which feels refreshing. When we say goodbye, he tells me he'll see me in class, and I realize I'm smiling as I walk back to the machines. Saturday afternoon, Valerie comes into my room holding her phone with a weird expression on her face. She asks if I want to see something, and I know immediately it's about Jerome. Part of me wants to say no, but I take the phone anyway. It's a post from a mutual friend showing Jerome and Brianna at a restaurant downtown. They're sitting across from each other, and he's laughing at something she said. My chest tightens and I feel physically sick, like someone punched me in the stomach. I hand the phone back and tell Valerie I'm fine, but she knows I'm lying. I spend the rest of the day in bed scrolling through my phone and feeling sorry for myself. Sunday is the same. I barely eat and ignore texts from my friends and keep replaying that photo in my head. I'm angry at Jerome for moving on so fast, and angry at Brianna for existing, and angry at myself for still caring this much. Monday morning, my door flies open and Tiana is standing there looking annoyed. She drove up from home without telling me, and she's clearly not taking no for an answer. She literally pulls the covers off me and tells me to get dressed because we're leaving. I try to argue, but she's not having it. She drives me to a salon and gets my hair trimmed while I sit there feeling numb. Then she takes me to lunch at my favorite sandwich place and reminds me that I'm allowed to have bad days, but I can't live in them. She says seeing that photo was hard, but hiding in bed isn't going to make it hurt less. I know she's right, but it's easier to feel sorry for myself than to actually deal with my feelings. By the time she drops me back at my apartment, I feel a little better, or at least less stuck. In my next therapy session, I talk about seeing the photo and how it made me feel like I wasted 2 years on someone who moved on so quickly. The therapist asks me what I learned during those 2 years, and I realize I don't know how to answer. She helps me reframe it as 2 years of learning what I want and don't want in a relationship. She says the time wasn't wasted just because it ended, that every experience teaches us something about ourselves. I'm not sure I believe her yet, but I write it down in my notes anyway. She gives me homework to list 3 things I want in my next relationship that I didn't have with Jerome. I promise to bring it next week. Wednesday after biology class, Kellen catches up with me in the hallway. He asks if I want to be study partners since we're both struggling with the material. I agree immediately, grateful for the distraction and the chance to focus on something other than my breakup. We exchange numbers and make plans to meet at the library on Friday. When I tell Valerie about it later, she raises her eyebrows and asks if he's cute. I throw a pillow at her and tell her it's just studying, but she's smiling like she knows something I don't. Friday at the library, Kellen is already at a table with his textbook open and notes spread everywhere. We spend 2 hours going over genetics problems and making flashcards. He's patient when I don't understand something and explains things in a way that actually makes sense. During a break, he mentions he transferred here this semester from a school in another state. That explains why he doesn't know my history with Jerome or anything about the breakup. It's nice being around someone who sees me as just me, not as Jerome's ex-girlfriend or the girl who got dumped. When we pack up to leave, he asks if I want to study together again next week, and I say yes without hesitating. Sunday night, I'm doing homework when I realize I've gone 3 whole days without thinking about Jerome constantly. Then I immediately ruin it by thinking about how I haven't been thinking about him. I text Valerie about it, and she responds with 3 laughing emojis. She says that's still progress even if I did just break my streak by noticing. I put my phone down and try to focus on my essay, but I'm smiling a little because maybe she's right. Tuesday afternoon, Matthew texts asking if I want to come to a party at his friend's apartment this weekend. I start typing no automatically because parties mean running into people who know Jerome and answering questions about why we broke up. But then Matthew adds that Jerome is definitely out of town visiting his parents, so I won't have to worry about seeing him. I stare at that message for a long time, feeling pathetic that I need that reassurance just to go to a party. I type yes before I can change my mind and immediately regret it. Valerie finds me stress cleaning the bathroom that night and makes me stop scrubbing the same spot on the sink for the 3rd time. She reminds me that going out and being social is good for me even if it feels scary. Saturday night, I change my outfit 4 times before settling on jeans and a sweater that makes me feel comfortable, but not like I'm trying too hard. The party is already crowded when I arrive, and Matthew meets me at the door with a drink and introduces me to a group of people from his engineering classes. Nobody asks about Jerome. Nobody even mentions him. Instead, they ask about my major and what classes I'm taking this semester. A girl named Sophie tells me about her ceramics class and how terrible she is at throwing pots, but how much fun it is anyway. A guy named Derek mentions he's planning a backpacking trip next summer and asks if I've ever been hiking. I find myself actually talking about things I'm interested in, instead of just being Jerome's girlfriend who smiles and nods. Around midnight, I'm talking to a guy named Alex about our shared hatred of statistics homework when he asks for my number. I freeze for a second because I wasn't expecting it and I'm not sure I'm ready for this. But Valerie's voice in my head reminds me that giving someone my number doesn't mean I'm committing to anything, so I type my contact info into his phone. He texts me immediately, so I have his number too, and I feel weird and guilty like I'm doing something wrong even though Jerome and I have been broken up for months. I leave the party feeling lighter than I have in weeks, because I had actual conversations about myself as a person, not as half of a couple. The next morning, I wake up to a text from Alex asking if I want to grab coffee sometime this week. My stomach drops and I immediately panic because what was I thinking giving him my number when I'm clearly not ready to date anyone? I stare at the message for hours while doing homework and cleaning my room, and basically doing anything to avoid responding. Valerie comes home from the library and finds me sitting on my bed staring at my phone. I show her the text, and she sits down next to me and says, "I don't owe him anything, and it's completely okay to not be ready." She helps me write a polite message saying I'm not really in a place to date right now, but I appreciate him asking. He responds within minutes saying he totally understands and hopes I'm doing okay. I'm relieved he's nice about it, but also frustrated with myself for not being ready to move on. My therapy appointment on Wednesday feels heavier than usual because I can't stop thinking about how everyone expects me to be over Jerome by now. I tell the therapist about the party and giving Alex my number and then panicking when he actually followed up. She asks why I feel pressure to start dating again, and I admit it's because being single feels like proof that I'm still broken. Then she asks me what I'm actually sad about when I think about Jerome, and I realize I don't know how to answer that. She rephrases it and asks if I'm mourning the relationship itself, or the future I thought I was going to have. That question sits in my chest like a weight, because I realize she's right. I'm not actually that sad about losing Jerome specifically. I'm sad about losing the apartment we were going to get together, and the trips we'd planned, and the life I'd built in my head where everything worked out. I'd imagined holidays with his family, and eventually getting engaged and building a whole future that doesn't exist anymore. Walking back to my apartment after therapy, I feel like something shifted in my brain. I'm not upset about Jerome the person. I'm upset about having to reimagine my entire future without the framework I'd built around us. That night, I pull out a notebook and start making a list of things I want to do that have nothing to do with relationships or Jerome or anyone else. I write down taking a pottery class like Sophie mentioned at the party. I add applying for a summer internship abroad because I've always wanted to travel, but Jerome never wanted to leave the state. I list all the books on my shelf I never got around to reading because I was always doing what Jerome wanted to do instead. The list gets longer, and I start feeling excited instead of sad, because these are things I actually want for myself. Thursday after our biology exam, Kellen suggests we grab coffee to celebrate surviving another test. We end up at the campus coffee shop comparing our probably wrong answers and laughing about how much we both hate memorizing cell structures. He mentions he's planning to study abroad next fall in Australia, and his whole face lights up when he talks about it. I find myself telling him about the internship programs I've been researching and how I'm thinking about applying even though the deadline is only 2 weeks away. He gets really enthusiastic and pulls up the application website on his phone and makes me promise to apply before the deadline. He says sometimes you just have to take the risk and figure out the details later. Walking back to my apartment, I actually believe I might apply instead of just thinking about it. That weekend, I'm sitting at my desk working on the internship application when Valerie comes home looking uncomfortable. She sits down on her bed and says she heard from a mutual friend that Jerome and Brianna are having problems. My first reaction is this surge of hope that makes me feel disgusting and pathetic. I hate that part of me is happy they're struggling because it means maybe he'll realize he made a mistake. Valerie can see it on my face and gently reminds me that even if they break up, it doesn't mean Jerome and I should get back together. I know she's right, but I can't stop thinking about it all night. Monday morning, I call Tiana and admit that I'm still hoping Jerome will come back even though I know it's stupid. She listens without interrupting and then says something that hits me hard. She says that even if Jerome did realize he made a mistake and wanted me back, taking him back would mean settling for someone who couldn't choose me the first time. She reminds me that he left me sitting alone at a restaurant on our anniversary and made me question my worth for months. She says I deserve someone who never makes me doubt whether they want me. I know she's right, but letting go of that hope feels impossible. In my next therapy session, I talk about still holding on to hope that Jerome will come back, even though I know we're wrong for each other. The therapist asks me why letting go feels so hard, and I realize it's because letting go of hope feels like admitting I failed. Like admitting the relationship ending was real and final, and I have to actually move forward instead of waiting. She helps me see that holding on to hope is actually holding me back from choosing myself, and building the life I actually want. She says letting go isn't giving up, it's making space for something better. I leave that session feeling exhausted, but also lighter somehow, like I finally have permission to stop waiting for Jerome to fix things and start fixing them myself. I spend the rest of the week finishing up the application. Every section needs attention, and I keep second-guessing my answers about why I want this internship and what I hope to gain from it. The truth is, I want to be somewhere Jerome has never been and start completely fresh. But I can't write that in an application, so I focus on professional development and cultural immersion instead. The night before the deadline, I'm still tweaking my personal statement at 10:30. Valerie brings me tea and tells me it's good enough and I need to stop obsessing. But I read through it 3 more times anyway, making tiny changes that probably don't matter. At 11:45, I'm staring at the submit button feeling like I might throw up. This feels huge in a way I didn't expect. If I get this, I'll be gone for months in a city where nobody knows about Jerome or Brianna or any of it. I'll just be me without all the baggage of the past year. My cursor hovers over the button and I take a deep breath. At 11:59, I click submit and immediately close my laptop like I might change my mind if I look at it any longer. My hands are shaking and I feel this weird mix of excited and terrified. Valerie hugs me and says she's proud of me for taking the risk. The next morning, Kellen texts asking if I want to check out the new art exhibit in the student union. I almost say no because I have reading to catch up on, but then I remember what the therapist said about saying yes to things. So I text back that I'm in and we meet up around noon. The exhibit is student work from the advanced painting class, and some of it is actually really good. We walk slowly through the gallery and Kellen points out his favorite pieces while I try to figure out what the abstract ones are supposed to represent. He makes jokes about how one painting looks like someone spilled their lunch, and I laugh harder than the joke deserves. We spend almost 2 hours just looking at art and talking about classes and his plans to study in Australia. He asks about my internship application, and I tell him I submitted it last night. He gets really enthusiastic and says he has a good feeling about it. I realize we haven't talked about relationships or exes or anything heavy at all. It's just easy and comfortable, and I don't have to explain myself or my past. When we leave the gallery, the sun is setting and the campus looks pretty in the golden light. Kellen walks me partway back to my apartment, still making terrible jokes about the abstract paintings. I'm laughing at something he said about geometric shapes when I realize I haven't thought about Jerome all day until just now. The thought hits me suddenly and I almost stop walking. An entire day went by and I was just living my life without that constant background noise of missing him or wondering what he's doing. Kellen notices I got quiet and asks if I'm okay. I tell him I'm good and I actually mean it. Thursday is game night at the student center and I show up with snacks like usual. Matthew is already there setting up the card game and a few other people from our friend group are scattered around the table. We play for about an hour and I'm actually winning for once when Matthew mentions casually that Jerome asked about me. Everyone at the table goes quiet and looks at me like they're waiting for me to fall apart. But my first reaction isn't hope or sadness. It's annoyance. Like he doesn't get to check on me now after he walked away and chose Brianna. Matthew must see something on my face because he quickly adds that he didn't tell Jerome much, just that I was doing fine. I appreciate that, but I'm also irritated that Jerome thinks he can just ask mutual friends how I'm doing, like we're casual acquaintances. He gave up the right to know about my life when he left me sitting alone at that restaurant. I focus back on the card game and play my next hand. Someone changes the subject to an upcoming concert and the conversation moves on. But I'm still thinking about it on my walk home. The old me would have been hopeful that Jerome asking meant something. But now I'm just annoyed that he thinks he can keep tabs on me from a distance. I don't want him wondering about me. I want him to forget I exist the same way I'm trying to forget he exists. 2 days later, I'm in my room working on an essay when my laptop dings with a new email. I almost ignore it, but something makes me check. It's from the Barcelona internship program. My heart starts racing before I even open it. The subject line says video interview request, and I actually scream. Valerie comes running from the kitchen thinking something's wrong, but I'm jumping up and down pointing at my laptop. They want to interview me. They actually want to interview me. We're both screaming now and jumping around like idiots, and my downstairs neighbor bangs on their ceiling to tell us to shut up. I don't care. I read the email 5 times to make sure it's real. They want to do a video interview next week, and they've attached some information about what to prepare. Valerie grabs my hands, and we jump around some more until we're both out of breath and laughing. This feels real now in a way it didn't before. I might actually go to Barcelona. I might actually get to start over somewhere completely new. I spend the next few days preparing for the interview. They sent a list of possible questions about my goals and qualifications and what I hope to gain from the experience. I write out answers and practice saying them out loud until they sound natural instead of rehearsed. Valerie plays interviewer and asks me the questions while I try not to sound too nervous. I research the program and the city and the company I'd be working with. Every free moment I have goes into preparation. I realize how much energy I've been wasting on thinking about Jerome when I could have been focusing on things like this. Things that actually matter for my future. I practice talking about my strengths and my experience and my academic interests. I remember that I'm actually good at things. I have skills and knowledge and ambition that have nothing to do with being someone's girlfriend. The realization feels important somehow. Like I'm remembering who I was before Jerome and also discovering who I could be after him. The day of the interview, I set up my laptop with good lighting and make sure my background looks neat. I'm wearing a nice shirt and probably too much makeup because I'm nervous. The interviewer is a woman named Clara who seems friendly and asks thoughtful questions. I answer each one as honestly as I can while still sounding professional. She asks why I want this internship, and I talk about wanting to experience a different culture and challenge myself in new ways. I don't mention that I also want to escape everything familiar, but maybe she can read between the lines. The interview lasts about 30 minutes, and by the end I feel good about how it went. I was confident and clear, and I didn't stumble over my words too much. When it's over, I sit in my room feeling proud of myself. I showed up as myself and gave it my best effort. Whatever happens now is out of my control, but I did everything I could. That has to count for something. Tiana drives up that weekend to take me out for dinner. We go to this Italian place downtown and order too much food like we always do. She asks about the interview, and I tell her every detail while she listens and smiles. Then she says something that catches me off guard. She tells me she's noticed a real change in me over the past few weeks. She says I seem more like the person I was before Jerome, but also somehow more solid and sure of myself. I don't know what to say to that. I've been so focused on just getting through each day that I haven't thought about whether I'm actually changing. But maybe she's right. Maybe going through this and coming out the other side has made me stronger somehow. We finish dinner and drive around town talking about nothing important. She drops me off at my apartment and hugs me tight before she leaves. She tells me she's proud of me, and I believe her. The next week, I'm at the grocery store picking up basics when I see Brianna in the produce section. My heart starts racing immediately, and I feel that familiar panic rising in my chest. She's looking at apples and hasn't seen me yet. I could turn around and leave, but something makes me stay. I grab what I need and walk past her aisle. She looks up and our eyes meet. Her expression shifts to something like guilt or maybe regret. She opens her mouth like she wants to say something, but I just nod politely and keep walking. I don't stop. I don't engage. I don't give her the chance to explain or apologize or whatever she was going to say. My hands are shaking as I check out, but I feel powerful. I chose my own peace over my curiosity about what she wanted to say. I chose to walk away instead of getting pulled back into their drama. In the parking lot, I sit in my car for a minute, letting my heart rate return to normal. I did it. I saw her, and I didn't fall apart. In therapy 2 days later, I talk about the grocery store encounter. I tell the therapist how my first instinct was panic, but how I managed to just keep walking. She points out that I'm finally putting my own peace above my curiosity about Jerome and Brianna. She's right. The old me would have stopped and talked to Brianna just to get information about Jerome. I would have tortured myself with whatever she said and analyzed it for days. But I didn't do that this time. I chose myself instead. The therapist says that's real progress, and I should recognize it as such. We talk about how healing isn't linear and I'll probably still have hard days. But the fact that I can handle seeing Brianna without falling apart shows how far I've come. I leave the session feeling lighter. I'm not completely healed, and I still think about Jerome sometimes. But I'm getting there. And that's enough for now. A few days after my last study session with Kellen, he texts me asking if I want to go to a concert next month. The message sits on my phone for a minute while I process what he's really asking. This isn't about studying or grabbing coffee between classes. This is different. I text back asking what band, and he sends me a link to a group I mentioned liking weeks ago during one of our library sessions. He remembered. That small detail makes me smile, but also makes my stomach twist with something like guilt. I meet him at the student center the next afternoon, and we sit outside on one of the benches near the fountain. The weather is getting colder, and I pull my jacket tighter while we talk about nothing important for a few minutes. Then I just say it straight out. I tell him I'm not looking for a relationship right now. The words feel awkward coming out, but I force myself to keep going. I explain that I'm still figuring out who I am on my own, and I don't want to lead him on, or make him think this is going somewhere it's not. Kellen listens without interrupting, and when I finish, he just nods. He says he understands, and that he genuinely enjoys spending time with me with no pressure or expectations. He still wants to go to the concert as friends if I'm interested. The relief I feel is immediate, and I agree. We spend another hour talking about our biology final, and I leave feeling lighter, like I handled something difficult in the right way. That night, Valerie asks me point blank if I'm ready to start dating again. We're in our apartment making dinner, and she's chopping vegetables while I stir pasta on the stove. Her question catches me off guard, and I open my mouth to give her some automatic answer about taking things slow. But then I stop. I actually think about it for a minute, really consider what I want, instead of what I think I should want. The answer surprises me. I tell her I don't know if I want to date right now. I'm enjoying figuring out who I am on my own without trying to fit myself into someone else's life or mold myself into what they need. Valerie stops chopping and looks at me with this expression that's part surprise and part pride. She says that's probably the healthiest thing she's heard me say in months. We finish making dinner and eat while watching some cooking competition show, and I feel good about my answer. I'm not avoiding relationships out of fear or hurt. I'm choosing myself on purpose. 2 weeks later, I'm in the library studying for my literature final when my phone buzzes with an email notification. I almost ignore it because I'm deep into analyzing some poem about nature and mortality. But something makes me check. The subject line says Barcelona Summer Internship Program, and my heart immediately starts racing. I open the email and read the first line 3 times before it actually registers. They're offering me the position. I got it. I actually got the internship in Barcelona. My eyes start watering right there in the quiet study section, and I have to close my laptop and shove my books into my bag. People are staring as I hurry toward the exit, but I don't care. The tears are happy ones, but they won't stop coming. I get outside into the cold air and immediately call Tiana. She answers on the second ring, and I can barely get the words out. I'm crying and laughing at the same time while I tell her about the email. She screams so loud I have to hold the phone away from my ear. She starts asking a million questions about when I leave and what the program involves and whether I'm scared. I answer while walking aimlessly around campus, too excited to stand still. By the time we hang up, my face hurts from smiling and my fingers are numb from the cold, but I feel like I could run a marathon. I call my parents that evening and tell them about Barcelona. My mom's reaction is immediate joy, followed by 1,000 practical questions about housing and safety, and whether I'll have time to visit them before I leave. My dad gets on the phone and congratulates me, then makes some joke about me becoming too sophisticated for them after living in Europe. But then my mom says something that makes me pause. She tells me she's proud of me for taking a risk and choosing an adventure. Her words hit me harder than I expect because I realize this is the first major decision I've made in years that has nothing to do with a boyfriend. I didn't choose Barcelona because Jerome wanted me to, or because it would be good for our relationship. I chose it for me, for my own growth and future. That realization sits with me after we hang up. I'm making choices based on what I want, not what someone else needs from me. The next week, Matthew finds me at game night and pulls me aside during a break between rounds. He has this weird expression on his face like he's not sure whether to tell me something. Finally, he just says it. Jerome heard about my Barcelona internship and seemed surprised I was leaving the country. Matthew doesn't elaborate on how Jerome found out or what exactly he said. But hearing it gives me this small surge of satisfaction that I don't feel guilty about. Jerome is realizing I have a whole life that doesn't involve him anymore. I'm not sitting around waiting for him to figure out his feelings or hoping he'll come back. I'm moving forward with plans that are bigger than our failed relationship. I thank Matthew for telling me, and we go back to playing cards. Later that night, I think about Jerome being surprised, and I smile. Good. Let him be surprised. Let him see that I'm doing more than just surviving without him. Over the next few weeks, I throw myself into planning for Barcelona. I research the city obsessively, reading about neighborhoods and metro lines and the best places to get coffee. I join online groups for the internship program and start talking to other students who'll be there. I watch videos about Spanish culture and try to learn basic phrases, even though the program is in English. Every night, I fall asleep reading about Barcelona or looking at photos of the architecture and beaches. The excitement builds with each new thing I learn. What strikes me most is how genuinely happy I am about going alone. I'm not wishing I had someone to share it with or feeling sad about experiencing it by myself. The idea of being somewhere Jerome has never been, of starting completely fresh in a place with no memories of us, feels like freedom. I'm creating a whole new chapter of my life that belongs only to me. The concert with Kellen arrives on a cold Friday night in early December. We meet outside the venue, and the energy of the crowd immediately lifts my mood. Inside, the music is loud and the lights are flashing, and for 2 hours I don't think about Jerome or Barcelona or anything except the band and the songs. Kellen and I dance and sing along, and between sets we talk about nothing important. It's easy and fun and uncomplicated. When the concert ends, he walks me back to my apartment. At my door, he kisses me goodnight. It's nice. His lips are soft and he smells like cologne and the cold night air. But I don't feel fireworks or that electric spark everyone talks about. When we pull apart, I'm okay with that. I'm learning that friendship and fun matter too, that not every kiss has to be earth-shattering or lead to something serious. We say goodnight and I go inside feeling content. Not giddy or obsessed, but genuinely content, and that feels like its own kind of progress. The semester ends and I start packing up my dorm room for winter break. I'm sorting through books and papers when I find an old photo of Jerome and me tucked inside a notebook I haven't opened in months. We're at some outdoor festival, both smiling at the camera with our arms around each other. I look at it for a long minute. The sadness that comes is real, but it's not devastating. It doesn't knock the wind out of me or make me want to cry. I just feel a quiet melancholy for what we had and what I thought we'd be. Then I tear the photo in half and throw it in the trash bag with all the other things I'm getting rid of. I keep packing, folding clothes, and wrapping up decorations, and by the time I'm done, the photo is buried under other garbage, and I've moved on to making my packing list for going home. At Tiana's house for the holidays, I tell my whole family about Barcelona over dinner the first night. My younger cousins think it's cool and ask if I'll meet famous soccer players. My aunt wants to know about the food, and whether I'll be safe traveling alone. My uncle makes jokes about me forgetting English and coming back with an accent. They ask about Jerome once, just a casual question about whether we're still in touch. I say we haven't spoken, and then someone changes the subject to ask about my internship duties. The conversation moves on naturally, and I'm grateful. Jerome is becoming just a footnote in my story, not the main plot anymore. After dinner, Tiana and I do dishes together, and she bumps my shoulder with hers. She doesn't say anything, but the gesture says enough. She's proud of me. I'm proud of me too. New Year's Eve. I'm back in town with Valerie and our group of friends at someone's apartment party. The place is packed and loud, and everyone is drinking cheap champagne and wearing silly hats. As midnight approaches, we all crowd around the TV to watch the countdown. The numbers tick down and people start shouting. 10, 9, 8. Valerie grabs my hand and squeezes. 7, 6, 5. I look around at all these people who stuck by me through the hardest months. 4, 3, 2. At midnight, everyone cheers and hugs and kisses. Valerie pulls me into a tight hug and wishes me a happy new year. I hug her back and realize I don't feel sad about being single. I don't feel like I'm missing out or wish I had someone to kiss at midnight. Instead, I feel hopeful about all the possibilities ahead. I feel grateful for the people who supported me and excited about Barcelona and proud of how far I've come. The old me would have spent this night crying over Jerome or feeling sorry for myself. But I'm not that person anymore. I'm someone who chose herself and her dreams, and that feels like the best way to start a new year. Back at the school in January, the campus feels different, like I'm seeing it through new eyes instead of through the fog of heartbreak that clouded everything last semester. I'm walking to my first class when I spot Jerome across the quad near the library steps. He's wearing his red jacket and carrying his backpack, looking exactly the same as he always did. My heart does a small flutter, but it's more like muscle memory than actual feeling. He sees me at the same moment and raises his hand in a wave. I wave back without breaking my stride or feeling the need to change direction. He's just someone I used to know now, someone who was part of my life but isn't anymore. The distance between us feels right, like we're both exactly where we're supposed to be. I keep walking to class and don't look back. The first thing I do to start my last semester before Barcelona is sign up for Introduction to Pottery in the art building. I've always wanted to take it, but Jerome thought art classes were a waste of time compared to practical courses. Now I can do whatever I want. The studio smells like wet clay and paint, and there are about 15 of us sitting at pottery wheels arranged in a circle. The instructor shows us how to center the clay on the wheel and shape it with our hands. My first attempt collapses into a lumpy mess within 30 seconds. My second attempt slides off the wheel completely. By the end of class, my hands are covered in dried clay, and I haven't made anything that looks remotely like a bowl, but I'm smiling the whole walk back to my apartment. It's mine, this messy creative thing that has nothing to do with anyone else's expectations. Kellen and I fall into an easy pattern where we meet at the library twice a week to study and sometimes grab lunch at the student union afterward. There's no pressure or weird tension between us, just comfortable friendship. One afternoon, he mentions he's been seeing someone from his physics class and asks if I want to meet her sometime. I tell him I'd love to, and I mean it. When he talks about her, his whole face lights up in a way that makes me genuinely happy for him. We're sitting in the cafeteria when she comes over to join us, a girl with dark curly hair and a bright laugh. She's nice and clearly into Kellen, and watching them together doesn't make me feel jealous or left out. It just makes me feel like everything worked out the way it should have. In pottery class, there's a guy named Devin who sits 2 wheels over from me. He's better at pottery than I am, but not by much, and we joke about our disasters while cleaning up after class. One Thursday, he asks if I want to get coffee sometime, just the 2 of us. I say yes without overthinking it or making excuses. We meet at the coffee shop on Saturday afternoon and talk about our classes and families and what we want to do after graduation. He's studying environmental science and wants to work for the National Park Service. I tell him about Barcelona, and he thinks it sounds incredible. The conversation flows naturally, and I don't feel nervous or like I'm performing some version of myself. When we finish our coffee, he asks if I want to do it again, and I'm honest with him that I'm leaving for Barcelona in a few months and not really looking for anything serious. He says he appreciates the honesty, and we leave it as friends. Walking home, I feel proud of myself for being open to meeting someone new, even if it didn't turn into a relationship. My therapy sessions are winding down before I leave for Barcelona, and in one of our last meetings, the therapist asks how I feel about Jerome now. I sit there thinking about it for a minute, really considering the question instead of giving an automatic answer. I realize I haven't thought about him in weeks except in passing, like when I see his favorite restaurant or hear a song we used to listen to together. The sharp pain is gone, and what's left is just a quiet acceptance that we weren't right for each other. I tell the therapist this, and she smiles and says, "That's real progress. That healing isn't about never thinking of someone, but about thinking of them without it hurting." She asks what I've learned about myself through all of this. I tell her I learned I'm stronger than I thought, that I can choose myself even when it's hard, and that I don't need someone else to make me whole. Valerie and I start planning my going away party 2 weeks before I leave. She insists on hosting it at our apartment and invites everyone who's been part of my support system these past months. The night of the party, people start arriving around 7 with food and drinks and little gifts for my trip. Matthew shows up with a Spanish phrase book wrapped in newspaper, and I laugh so hard I almost cry. He hugs me and tells me he's proud of me for taking this leap. The apartment fills up with friends and music and laughter, and I look around at all these people who stuck by me when I was a mess. Valerie makes a toast about how I'm the bravest person she knows, and everyone raises their glasses. I feel overwhelmed with gratitude and love for these humans who saw me at my worst and loved me anyway. My last week before leaving, I'm at the coffee shop finishing some paperwork for Barcelona when Jerome walks in. We make eye contact, and there's a moment where we could both pretend we didn't see each other, but instead he walks over to my table. He asks if he can sit for a minute, and I say okay. We make small talk about school, and then he mentions he heard about my internship in Barcelona. He says it sounds amazing, and he's happy for me, and I can tell he means it. I tell him I hope things are going well for him, and I mean that too. We talk for maybe 5 minutes, just two people who used to be important to each other catching up briefly. When he leaves, I realize I'm genuinely happy for him, and genuinely happy for myself, and that we're both better off living separate lives. There's no anger or bitterness left, just acceptance. I board my plane to Barcelona with 2 huge suitcases that barely fit in the overhead bins and a backpack stuffed with guidebooks and travel documents. My seat is by the window, and as we taxi down the runway, I press my face against the glass, watching everything get smaller. The airport buildings shrink to toy size. Then the cars on the highway become little dots. Then the whole city spreads out below me like a map. As we climb higher and break through the clouds, I feel this incredible lightness in my chest. I'm finally moving forward instead of looking back at what I lost. I'm choosing adventure and growth and myself. The flight attendant comes by with drinks, and I order a ginger ale and open one of my guidebooks to the section on Barcelona neighborhoods. My first week in Barcelona is a blur of new faces and new streets, and getting lost trying to find my apartment. I make friends with other interns from Brazil and Germany and Australia, and we explore the city together in our free time. I send Tiana and Valerie approximately 1 million photos of the architecture and the beaches and the tiny tapas bars we discover. They respond with strings of heart emojis and messages saying how proud they are and how much they miss me. I miss them too, but I'm too busy soaking up everything new to feel homesick yet. My Spanish is terrible, but I'm learning, and the woman who runs the cafe near my apartment is patient with me when I butcher my coffee order. Every morning, I wake up excited about what the day will bring. Standing on my tiny apartment balcony at sunset, I look out at the Barcelona skyline with its mix of old Gothic buildings and modern architecture. The sky is pink and orange, and the street below me is full of people heading home from work or out to dinner. I think about how 3 months ago I was sitting in my apartment, unable to imagine feeling happy again. I was so convinced that losing Jerome meant losing my future, that I'd never stop hurting. But here I am in a completely different country, living a life I chose for myself. I'm not completely healed, and I still have moments where sadness catches me off guard, but I chose myself and my dreams over waiting around for someone who couldn't choose me. That feels like the best kind of ending and the best kind of beginning all at once. Okay, that's where we'll stop before I start rambling again. Seriously though, thanks for hanging out till the end. It means a lot. Go drink some water or text someone you care about, yeah?